This is Michael Moore, and this is Rumble. You know, I was thinking the other day, in anticipation of today's episode, that we've all had that feeling, you know, walking out of a movie theater, feeling exhilarated, inspired, in wonderment about what we've just witnessed. I know that's not all the time, but you know those times when that happens. For me, it's like when I walk out of a movie like that, I can't get in a car. I can't get on a subway. I have to walk because what's just happened to me has been almost an out of body experience. My mind is spinning with ideas and emotions. But for all the glitz and glamour of Hollywood and the incredible actors, the special effects, the costumes, the makeup, the common denominator in every great film that you or I have seen and every wonderful experience that we've had walking out of that movie theater, the one common denominator is great writing. It all begins with great writing. I know maybe you've heard that. It's a cliche by now, but it is the truth. And one of the great Hollywood screenwriters of our time is our guest today, Eric Roth. Eric Roth, these are just a few of his writing credits. A Star is Born, the most recent one with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. One of really my favorite films of all time, and we're going to talk a bit about that. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, The Good Shepherd, Munich, Ali, The Insider, The Horse Whisperer, The Postman, and the screenplay for which he won an Academy Award for in 1994, the little-known but well-regarded Forrest Gump. Eric has also written screenplays for what I believe are two of the most highly anticipated films in our upcoming post-pandemic world. And these two films are Dune. Yes, Dune. Finally, Dune. The Dune we've been waiting for. But the other movie that I have been waiting for, if you have been a listener of this podcast since the second episode, I believe, when our guest was Robert De Niro. And he talked about this film that he hoped that they would be doing. And on my way out of his office, he gave me a copy of the book, which is becoming the movie. It's called Killers of the Flower Moon. It's being directed by Martin Scorsese and will star Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio. But today, right now, there's a movie out that Eric Roth has helped to make, and not as a writer, not as a screenwriter, but as the producer. And you've heard me talk about this movie for the past number of weeks on Rumble. One of my favorite films of the year, Mank. Mank was directed by David Fincher and was written by Fincher's late father, Jack Fincher. In this film, Mank, 1930s Hollywood is reevaluated through the eyes of a scathing social critic and somewhat alcoholic screenwriter named Herman J. Mankiewicz, as he races to finish the screenplay of Citizen Kane for Orson Welles. The film stars Gary Oldman and Amanda Seyfried. It also features the wonderful music of Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Mank, my friends, is truly one of the best films I've seen this year. It's available now. You can see it on Netflix. It has 10 Academy Award nominations for this year's Oscars, including, obviously, Best Picture, Best Actor, that's Gary, Best Supporting Actress, that's Amanda, Costume, Makeup, Score. It's just every one of them a deserving nomination. And I am honored to have its producer and one of our great screenwriters on today's podcast. Please welcome Eric Roth. Eric, how are you?
I'm surviving. I've made it through. I got my vaccinations. I got to hug my grandchildren, at least a few of them. And
yes.
They all said enough, Papa. And I mean,
here we are.
Yeah, but the other day I went out and all of a sudden there was fucking traffic. It's like, wait a minute, maybe it's better to be in sanctuary here. I don't know.
Right.
But certainly it gets people back to work and all things that matter.
Right. But it would have been nice had we gotten some sort of magic wand waved over us a year ago, and you could have driven down the 405 at 90 miles an hour and not a car in sight.
That's exactly. We were we have a place, a very rural place in Montana, and we drove and stopped and just to go to the bathroom or something in Las Vegas, and I literally walked down the middle of the strip, not without a car in sight.
Wow. Yes. No.
Like, a bad dystopic movie.
So let me just start off by asking you this, because I'm going to try to get through all this. I have a number of questions I want to ask you about previous films. So let's start with Mank. And the first question maybe is just the obvious question. So you're nominated for this year's Oscars as a producer.
Yeah.
Of the Best Picture nominee, Mank, and it is a film about a screenwriter, and yet you are a screenwriter, but you are not nominated for this. So you've been nominated, I think, for four Best Pictures that have been nominated for Best Picture were written by you. So how does this feel?
David Fincher and I are best friends for life, kind of thing, and great collaborators. We fight like cats and dogs, and we did Benjamin Button together, and he's always asked me to give my God's honest about his movies at some point, and then tells me to shut up, But and he's a man of incredible gifts, and he came to me and said, my father wrote this screenplay a number of years ago. His dad's been gone for, I think, 16, 17 years, and he said, I would love to see if we can keep it intact as much as possible. Let's have his voice heard, and yet, how can we do this with, without messing around with the script and, rewriting it to death and everything else. And so I said, let me read it, and I read it, and I said, I think this is like 85, 90% there. I said, I think we, do due diligence. And he said, well, if you will do this with me, kind of be another's eyes and ears, and also utilize whatever knowledge you have of screenwriting, which is a lot, and of Hollywood, which is too much. How about you produce a movie? I said, I don't know producing anything. I know how to produce television shows. I did House of Cards and stuff, but that was strictly me with the writers. And so this was a new world, and I took it seriously, and I went every day and learned everything I could, and, became, I think, close with all the great craftspeople he has. He has almost a stock company of craftspeople, much less actors. And so I think I actually deserve the credit. I think I worked and earned it. And I said about this movie, and I'll shut up about it if you want, but it's as close to, I think, a work of art that I've been involved with.
Yes, it is definitely that. And I can see exactly why he would want you to be the producer of this, because as one of our greatest living screenwriters, to have your eyes and ears, your hands, your whatever there as his, I don't want to say backup, but just as collaborator.
Yeah, so anyway, like, X amount of months before things were supposed to begin, we started Zooming every morning or whatever, FaceTiming 5:36 in the morning, and David's a big taskmaster, and we went line for line, is this line in the right place? But we were always sort of obliged to keep as best we can everything he did, and there was very little I did. I mean, I think most was actually within kosher with even the Writers Guild, where you're allowed to, as a producer, do what they call A through H writing, which is just transposing things and editing, but not not really doing anything of any consequence that way. And I think and I think it was also a way for David to relearn the script, find what the rhythms of it were. And David's incredibly logical. He wants one thought to follow another, and I'm a little more fanciful, so that was part of our arguments. But he would always win because it's his first movie, it's his dad's movie. And anyway, that was where I came in for trying to protect and trying to enhance the screenplay where I could, and certainly with David. David and I did it together. We sort of read it together as one.
I had Aaron Sorkin on this podcast a few weeks ago, and he would not stop talking about the genius of David Fincher. And here they're both of their films are up for Best Picture this year.
I mean, David, and then he'll want to vomit if he hears me talk too long about him. But he is a really rare bird. He I don't even know if he finished high school, but he has there's a I don't want to say Rain Man quality about it. There is a savant quality about him that's particularly and sometimes it's infuriating, but on the other hand, it's breathtaking what he knows, not only about making films, which is something one could learn or even at least have the artistry for, but he also has a great well of knowing human behavior, how to pick out your worst and most insecurities. He's brazen and he's outrageous, and he's also he's particularly human in so many ways. Anyway, he's we can talk about a lot of directors I've worked with, and I would say David would be at the pinnacle, and right with him would be Marty. People I've worked with, and I work with everybody from Kurosawa through Steven Spielberg, et cetera. So David is Aaron is right to feel that he's kind of a national treasure.
I would certainly agree with that. And you have worked with these other national treasures, not just in this country, but as you said, from Kurosawa to Spielberg, which is how I often ask, when I'm on Colbert or whatever, to introduce me in that fashion, if they could just say, okay. He's worked with from Kurosawa to Spielberg.
Yeah, that's here's the thing. If you're going to get me, that's the kind of thing that you get choked up about, because you're going to be in that in memoriam on the Oscars one day.
Yeah, right.
That's like, oh boy.
Right. No, but it's true for you. It's that and so you've worked with Scorsese and Spielberg and Kurosawa, Michael Mann, who's the French Canadian guy. He's great. Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing
visual.
Amazing. But the public hears about this sort of screenwriter director back and forth, we'll call it. But it's an interesting position to be in. And those of us who make movies, we understand now. And of course, most of my movies obviously are documentaries, but I've always felt like a writing credit. The WGA should create a category for the editor, because the editor of a documentary, we have no script. He or she is not in the edit room.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
With a screenplay that they're following. They are having to help write this with me after we've shot it.
Even more complicated is that, they are very protective about credits, which they should be. But you will have two or three people who don't know each other from Adam, writing and rewriting each other. And then they decide they all feel they may have deserved credit on it. So then there's a fight for credit, which is not pretty. And I've always advocated, and some people agree with me, some don't, that they should have at least an additional writing credit, so it reflects honestly that other people had done some work on it.
Yeah, I've just decided I'm going to try to get this through the Writers Guild to acknowledge editors of documentaries. But if I don't, then I'm just going to find a way to do it anyways in the credits, because I feel like I need to share that.
Yeah, no, I get that. My daughter's a documentarian. She actually won an Oscar for a short documentary, and I know how she relies on her editing.
Yes, it's so what I said in the beginning in introducing you about the one thing to understand as you leave any great movie, as you leave the theater, is that this no way could this have happened, no matter how great the acting was, if the story didn't ring true, if the story had a false narrative, or anytime when you can see it, when you can see the film doing that, you've been taken out of watching the movie. You're no longer in the suspension of you're now present and noticing the movie.
That's right.
When we don't want you to notice the movie, we want you to be lost in the story.
Well, Francis Coppola said it always great. He said, if you're watching the chandelier, we're in trouble.
Right.
That's always truth. In other words, that if you're paying attention to, one of the great examples of, if you don't mind me interrupting, do you?
No, please.
The great examples of, I always thought about this movie, a Clint Eastwood movie, $1 Million Baby. So
Yeah.
he was saving money, and he literally staged, I think, 4 or 5 fight scenes in the very same location. I think we did it down here at a place that used to be called the Olympic Auditorium. Anyhow, and all he would do was he would put a new sign up on the wall that said, Albuquerque Fight Club or something. You know what I'm saying? So if you're in a different place, but if you're invested in the story, what'd you give? You didn't care,
No. And in fact, if your eye did see Albuquerque Fight Club, that's exactly where you believed you were.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Because you are subconsciously trusting the film at that point.
Right. That's right.
If it's not a good film, I mean, this is one of my great examples for myself is like the film Primary Colors. Do you remember this? Mike Nichols?
Very well.
Film. Yes. So it's a film. It's based on a fictional version of Clinton running for the first time for president, and with Hillary by his side, and
written by anonymous.
Written by somebody who I don't know.
Yeah, well, we know now, I think. But anyway,
now we know. Yes, now we know. And then I'm looking at the trailer or the ad, and starring John Travolta as Bill Clinton. And I remember saying, "Oh, I don't want to go see that. That's not going to work." I mean, I love John Travolta, but John Travolta, I'm supposed to believe he's Clinton. Yeah. But I have to say, now maybe this isn't true for you or anybody else. 10 minutes into that movie, because it was so well written and directed by Mike Nichols and acted by, I forgot that was Travolta.
Right.
I was not thinking that he was going to bust a move in the next 5 seconds.
Right.
I believed that was Bill Clinton. And I remember thinking afterwards, man, the power of a good film that can transport you like that. And you literally never think that's Travolta again during the rest of the movie.
I think that, not to sound pretentious, but I think that is, the writer does that to nth degree, and that it's all, I think it's a large matter of probably 2 or 3 things. One, certainly passion, and then 2, a belief that you're telling some truth, even if it's complete bullshit. And third, I think that with God being in the details, that you then have the details and research to back almost everything up you want to have come out as true.
Right.
I mean, I think, I don't want to misquote him, but Jim Cameron said something to the effect that a lot of his science was kind of, made up science, but he gave it such credence that you believed it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that worked, whether it was like in Terminator, the guy's, becoming whatever, transparent. Anyway, there is an art to that too. And the more skillful, but also the more, I think, the biggest thing I always believed, and I think you have to, in movies that work, you've earned the emotion the audience have. You've earned the laughter. You've earned everything that becomes important about it. If you haven't earned it, you're going to be in trouble.
So, watching Mank, not knowing what to expect, trusting who the director was, looked like a good cast, but there's certain sacred cows that you don't want anybody fucking with. And I would say Citizen Kane would be one of those. Right. So I come into it at the beginning with that apprehension. I leave the end of the movie, and I didn't realize this until 2 weeks later. I just happened to have Turner Classic Movies on, and there's the host, the grandson of Herman Mankiewicz, Ben Mankiewicz.
Ben Mankiewicz, yeah.
Yes. And they are now going to play Citizen Kane. And I start to watch the film, and I know this is going to sound like sacrilege, and if there's a 12-step program for me, please let me know what it is. But what I'm about to say, I don't know where it was in the movie. It was fairly early on, but certainly by the time it got to Marion Davies. And I had to stop watching it because the film, Citizen Kane, no longer rang true for me. And the depiction of Marion Davies, after seeing Amanda's depiction of Marion Davies in Mank, and the story behind the story of telling this, the relationship that Mankiewicz had with William Randolph Hearst,
Yes.
upon whom Charles Foster Kane is based in Citizen Kane, presented a whole new, I don't even think perspective is strong enough of a word. I was by watching Mank, I again felt transported to the world of Hollywood in the late 30s and early 40s. But also, instead of, I'd hate to say this, and apologies to Orson Welles if he's listening, but this seemed more authentic. Am I wrong in saying that?
I don't know.
And
He's not,
because I'm worried now that I can't ever. I'm worried I can't watch Citizen Kane again.
well, your biggest problem is you can't take it back. So
I can't take it back. That's right.
I don't know if I'd use inauthentic. I mean, I think because there's a lot of important things in that movie, in particular, that had, as far as
which movie now are you talking about?
Citizen Kane.
Okay.
Which had never, as far as I can recall, in my fairly extensive film, cinephile spot. I mean, that was the first movie, maybe a Russian movie, but that showed somebody from different perspectives. They always
Yes.
do it from one. The only other one that was kind of famous was a thing called The Bad and the Beautiful that just did 4 perspectives. And it was all about Kirk Douglas being a sort of a rotten producer or something. But and that's sort of was what kicked off some of the things we had to say, or David's father said about, you can't do somebody's whole life in 2 hours. You can only give an impression of it. And so then you get into all these sort of mini impressions of what was their relationship to, Citizen Kane or Charles Forster Kane, or to William Randolph Hearst as it was. And how did these people look at him? And then you have all these different points of view, which is what I think was a genius of, one of the things that was genius about the direction and the screenplay, obviously. And then I think on top of this whole psychological notion, which seems a little bit sort of simplistic now, but the idea of Rosebud, something being so important to the, our traumas and everything else in life. I think it was underplayed, but I think there was a Freudian quality to this pretty spectacular,
Right.
So I would say that too. So inauthentic, I mean, I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, we had one argument, David and I, that, there's a whole thing in Mank where he's apologizing to everybody in sight about how he didn't mean to hurt Marion because he was friends with Marion Davies. And I said to David, who's going to remember from the movie that, he depicted this kind of not so sophisticated opera singer, and he said, well, they'll have to go watch the movie. You know what I'm saying? That's how he felt about it. He didn't really want to help the audience that way.
Well, except the Marion Davies that's depicted in Mank is a complex, layered character who is both smart, also at times naive, but very intuitive and very caring toward Mankiewicz, toward him as a person who's struggling.
Yeah.
Wow. And then actually TCM had they did like a couple days of Marion Davies movies. Mm-hmm. And I watched a few of them, and I'm like, and I'm sure I've seen them before, but I was now through a whole new lens and realizing actually she was a good actress.
Yeah, she was pretty good. I mean, she was a unique, she was a comedian of a kind,
Yes, right.
With any, I guess maybe you have to say comedian, because then I don't want to genderize it anyway. But
right.
I think she was that. And then what happened was they were trying to put her into much more serious movies where I think she was, like Marie Antoinette and things like that. That became a problem.
Have you watched Citizen Kane since Mank?
Yeah, I did. I actually watched it about 2 weeks ago. But, look, it's like, I think part of it is just having seen certain things you've seen so many times, they just disappear in your, sort of. But I always believed that great movies are, I don't even know how to explain this. It's like sort of going to the other side of the moon where sort of lives are still being lived, that The Godfather still lives on. You know what I'm saying? all these things have some reality to them, as if they have a life of their own, and the great ones do, where you can still imagine somehow it was real, when they're not, I remember you mentioned Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, which I think was a complicated movie and worked for some people, not for others. But James Gandolfini was in it, and I remember walking in to meet him for the first time to go over what I'd written, and I sort of stopped because there was Tony Soprano. You know what I'm saying? And he said,
Right.
"Don't do that," he said to me.
Right. No.
You want to have his own persona,
Right. And so you got to know him, and you knew that he was actually just very sweet.
Yes, exactly.
Very wonderful human being.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually, now that you brought it up, and I'm gonna come back and I have some more questions about Mank, but Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. So you said some people it worked, some people it didn't work. Well, I guess was one of those people where it really worked.
I love that.
Oh,
well, I got to tell you that most
Eric.
of the audiences I watched it with, who we do a Q&A or something after, really loved it, and I was kind of surprised that it didn't get great reviews. We did get nominated for Best Picture, so that was nice. I think what some people didn't like, and I'm not blaming this young boy, but the director made a decision, and Stephen Daldry is a wonderful, wonderful man and director.
Yeah, correct.
He saw a little thing in the book that said that the boy was on that like Asperger's spectrum, and he went and got a kid who had Asperger's, and some people I think just didn't want to watch that, I think it's hard for them.
Wow, that's too bad.
Kind of too bad for them. Yeah, exactly how I felt.
Yeah. Well, let me say this, because I have a couple questions I want to ask you about the film. But just to set it up for people who haven't seen it, and first of all, I would please ask all supporters and lovers of this podcast to please watch this film. I'm sure you missed it when it came out. I will post where it's available here on my podcast page so that you can, whether you get it on Amazon or Netflix or whatever these days. Basically, this film it's a story of a 9-year-old boy who loses his father in the 9/11 attacks. His dad, I believe, worked in the World Trade Center. And there's an answering machine message that's left behind. And there's also a key. There's a key that his father has left behind. And there's no saying where it is to or from or whatever, but it's obviously a key to something in New York City. And so the boy goes on a mission because somehow he believes there will be some reconnection with his father once he unlocks the lock that this key belongs to.
Very good author. Jonathan Safran Foer wrote it.
Absolutely.
Beautiful book. And it's the book is very funny, very touching. And I think one of the problems, and this is a problem with movies to some extent, I'll give you another example. There's a great humor in the book, and there's an irony and everything else. But sometimes when things are too real, they lose some of that. And I'll give you Catch-22 is a perfect example, because you howled when you read the book, even when a guy's head was chopped off, like with propeller. When you saw that in the movie, not quite so funny.
Not so funny. You're right about that. Jeez. I saw that as a teenager, and I did not remember saying to myself, wow, that was really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
But another Mike Nichols film. So in his journey across the 5 boroughs to find, I don't know, God knows how many, like millions of locks there are in New York City. He runs across this elderly man who's played by Max von Sydow, and the great Swedish actor who I first saw again as a teenager in an Ingmar Bergman film.
Sure.
And he played the leading role in The Seventh Seal. He also had a small role in Wild Strawberries. And then, my friends, you've seen him in everything over the years, playing the villain in many films. He's best remembered, I think, by the public as the priest that gets tossed out the window in The Exorcist, and also as the CIA assassin in 3 Days of the Condor with Robert Redford. chilling.
Really.
This is one of our greatest actors of all time, and sadly, he passed away in March. He never won an Oscar, and I had on my little like New Year's list this January to, as an Academy member, as a former member of the Board of Governors, to write my letter of nomination for a special honorary Oscar.
He
for
was
him.
nominated for Extremely Loud, actually.
Oh yeah, no, he was nominated. He's been nominated.
Yeah.
But 90 years old,
yeah.
never one of our great actors and international actors of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I sadly he passes away, and it doesn't happen. And they don't give these posthumously. So anyway, so he plays the elderly man who essentially becomes a partner in crime with the young 9-year-old in trying to find the secret to why his dad left this key behind. Okay, I want to ask you this. This movie stayed with me for months. When you were writing this, and again, yes, you were adapting it from this book by Jonathan, who's, as you said, a great writer.
Yeah.
So this came out in 2011. All right, so that's 10 years after 9/11. Still, I'm sure a lot of people felt, oh, I don't know if I can handle this too soon, whatever. And while this wasn't billed as a 9/11 movie, because everything in the movie essentially happens after 9/11, with the exception of this phone call. What was this like for you? You're a native New Yorker. The country is still in not only disarray, but we have falsely gone to war against a country that had nothing
to do with it. Yeah,
with 9/11.
I know the whole thing was a mess. I mean, it was like, I mean, I had in mind, is this too early for this movie? And maybe it was actually. Maybe people weren't ready to really absorb some of the things that had to be talked about. I think the grief was so palpable about the whole. I mean, it was such a shock to the body, I guess, politic, you say, or but to the whole body of America. That first of all, that we were that vulnerable, I guess, but also this kind of surreal way to kill people by taking planes into buildings, you know. So the whole thing took on such another life of. I think it took everybody out of some kind of false comfort, I guess would be the right word. And it certainly did for me. I mean, I've had that twice, I think, in writing experiences. That was one, certainly. And the other was when I was on Munich, have such mixed emotions about one day the PLO would blow up a school bus with kids in it, right? And as a Jew also, I'd say, fuck them, let's kill every one of them. And then, you know, you'd say, well, you're doing exactly what you say you shouldn't do. You know, it becomes a nightmare of slaughter for everybody. And I don't know what the end result is. Could it have been in the movie? I don't think comes up with an end result, you know?
Well, actually, this was my next question after Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, because this isn't the only time you deal with those Twin Towers. And again, this scene in Munich, you've got the two actors that are there, the main actor, Eric Bana, who's the assassin, the Israeli assassin, and the other actor, and they're having this conversation there in Roosevelt Island about Eric Bana feels a lot of guilt and a lot of, I don't know what, but he knows that harm is going to come because of what he did in killing people that did not get their day in court, that did not get to defend themselves. And it wasn't good enough for him. Yeah, no, it wasn't good enough for him to say, well, the people in the Olympic Village didn't get to defend themselves. Doesn't matter. We hold ourselves to a higher standard than a potential murderer. So this is the beauty of this film, the complexity of it, that, you know, you're supposed to feel all during the film. Yeah, kill him. And then how long can you hold that up? Kill him. And then now civilians are starting to get killed in these assassination attempts, and things are happening. And Eric Bana, the lead character, is having qualms about if he's really part of a democracy, if he's really part of a free country, is this what we do? Just assassinate people? It's a powerful moment, and it's really it's at the end of the film. Don't worry, it's not a spoiler. It's just the big philosophical questions are now being asked about the way that the Israelis and the Americans do business. And just have a listen to this.
Did I commit murder? I want you to give me proof that everyone we killed had a hand in Munich.
I don't discuss such things with people who don't exist. You want to discuss? Come back to existence. You want your daughter to grow up in exile.
I want evidence.
Professor Hamshari with a beautiful wife and child. He was implicated in a failed assassination attempt on Ben Gurion. He was recruiting for Fatah France. You stopped him.
We should have tried to bring him to Israel.
As a hater, you're a harmless little writer in Rome. He was behind the bomb on El Al Flight 76 in 1968. He was working on another bomb last August. I could go on and on with this
According
shit.
to evidence nobody has seen. If these people committed crimes, we should have arrested them. Like Eichmann.
If these guys live, Israelis die. Whatever doubts you have, Avner. You know this is true. You did well, but you're unhappy.
I killed 7 men.
Not Salame. We'll get him, of course. You think you were the only team? It's a big operation. You were only a part. Does that assuage your guilt?
Did we accomplish anything at all? Every man we killed has been replaced by worse.
Why cut my fingernails? They'll grow back.
Did we kill to replace the terrorist leadership or the Palestinian leadership? You tell me what we've done.
You killed them for the sake of a country you now choose to abandon. The country your mother and father built, that you were born into. You killed them for Munich, for the future, for peace.
There's no peace at the end of this, no matter what you believe. You know this is true.
Here's what I know. Your father is sick, your mother will be alone. You're a Sabra, your wife and daughter are Sabras. What I came to say is this. Come home.
Come to my house for dinner tonight. Come on, you're a Jew, you're a stranger, it's written someplace or other that I'm meant to ask you to come and break bread with me. So, break bread with me, Ephraim.
No.
As those last lines are spoken, the two characters step aside and go off frame. And what is revealed, what they were standing in front of that was back in the distance, are the Twin Towers. Right. When they've just asked the question, will we pay for this someday? Is this really the way to go to bring about peace and to stop all this violence? And then boom, they walk off and and it is a chilling moment. And then the film ends and that's that. And you walk out of that theater going, oh man. And of course it's in hindsight now because we know the Twin Towers when we see the movie are gone. Yes. And you then ask the question, yes, when does this end? When does this end? And what can I, as a citizen who has no power, what can I do about it? Oh, it's so, Eric, the way you wrote that scene, the way Spielberg filmed it, and they had to digitally put in the Twin Towers.
Yeah, that was I don't know if Tony, I don't know if it was Tony Kushner. I can't really, I can take credit for what they talked about to some extent, but I think that was Steven, I think, and maybe Tony who came up with that. Because it wasn't on my radar. I wish it was. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. Okay. As I said, Tony Kushner, yeah, our greatest living playwright.
Yeah. No,
I'm serious.
Yeah, no, I love Tony so much personally that I would never try to steal an inch for him. You know, I don't know if it was him or just Steven. I think Steven may have just wanted that. He was smart, and he didn't really know what the end result of this was, because I think there was internal kind of, he was fighting internally about how he felt about a lot of this stuff too. Good.
That's what I felt. Good. We should all fight internally about how we're trying to resolve the great issues of the day.
That's right. That's right.
And never take the position. Don't never be in cement oh yes, this has to happen. We have to do this. And it's like, man, that hasn't gotten us very far.
No.
As humanity goes. And I love.
I love that you love that. I love that these were two. No, Munich was not as obscure. I like that these are the two movies that you really loved. I love that.
Well, yes, and not, of course, not just that, but and The Insider, as a documentary filmmaker who has tried to focus on the evils of corporate America and the number of people that they have killed, and in this case of this movie, the tobacco industry.
Yeah.
And you show in The Insider, you show what happened. So Al Pacino plays the 60 Minutes producer.
Lowell Bergman.
Yes. And the whistleblower is going to blow the whistle on big tobacco. And I remember watching this film and thinking, oh, geez, this is such a great thing to honor this whistleblower, but also they were out to destroy him. Well, I got to say that he was, I didn't even meet him until after I wrote it because I wasn't allowed to. He was under some kind of a court order not to talk about it. And so but I always found it fascinating from what I could do in research and what I could figure out about him. What does a man do who's a scientist at a tobacco company? You know what I'm saying? So his personal integrity was a little questionable. And he really was, I think he mostly was angry about the fact they wouldn't give him his pension. You know what I'm saying? And then you can go from there. Then I think he did, I think he did, after that, he was very brave and did the right thing. And he's a pretty incredible man, I think, for being a true whistleblower. But at first, his wife's family owned tobacco farms, and he was very torn. And as I say, he was working for Lorillard or somebody, and that was not pretty. Yes. And you know what? But this is the case with many whistleblowers where they were part of the system for a while. Mm-hmm. The judgment that is not necessary from anybody when somebody has the bravery, because the bravery of The Insider in this movie that you wrote is like, what I want a film like that to do is to encourage other whistleblowers and not to just show the damage and destruction that's done to the whistleblower by those in power. But of course we know the end of this story, and we know that people say to me all the time now, Mike, how are we ever going to get the almost 50% of the country that voted for Trump to get vaccinated? How are we going to get them to wear a mask? They think it's a political statement. And my answer to them always is, yeah, you know what? Give it some time, because there is something about peer pressure and about the ones you love going and doing something different than you. And then you start to see the sanity of it.
That's right. I couldn't echo you. You're very smart. Because I've always felt that, look, I was brought up as a red diaper. My parents, I spent more hours in the rain seeing Ethel Rosenberg has to get out of jail.
Right. Eric is essentially saying that his parents were communists.
They're commies. And my father, I'm not sure he thought Stalin was so bad. You know what I'm saying? It's like, are you kidding, Dad? But anyway, he was free, dyed in the wool.
Right.
But they were American communists, though. I think they had some good ideas. But
right, they still shopped at Macy's.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've gotten to know through various work stuff, and also just this place we have in Montana, and knowing a lot of red state people in quotes. They all are affected the same way everybody else is if they have a brother who's gay, or if they, sister who's gay,
Correct.
Or children who have depression, or anything that anybody has, and so they're affected like anybody else. So that's where I think it all comes home to roost. Sometimes they obviously don't vote for their own interests, and
but eventually, if something happens where they realize, oh, wait a minute, I think I've been had here. I think that. And they're never going to become a Democrat. They're never going to call themselves a liberal. But as I've said on this podcast before, when Billy Bob finds out that his wife, Susie Bob, is making $1 less an hour in the cashier line than the man next to her, Bobby Bob, is making $1 more an hour. And Billy Bob realizes, because his wife's paid $1 less, because she's not paid the same as men, that that they have $40 less a week coming in. That's when the flip happens. And again, they don't become Democrats, they don't become liberals,
That's right.
but they know what's right and wrong. They know what's fair, and the injustice of that. They then will be behind any effort to make sure that women are paid the same as men.
That's right.
In this country. And you can call that a commie pinko idea, but you know what? When Susie Bob's making $40 less a week, when she should be making that, and Billy Bob knows it, Billy Bob and Susie Bob are now on board calling their members of Congress saying, women, vote for that bill. Women should be paid the same as men. I think that in a film like The Insider, where this comes down to, we have to act as the collective, as the general, majority rule, minority rights, etc. But sometimes it is the single individual who blows the whistle, who refuses to give up her seat at the front of the bus. Sometimes it's that one person.
Yeah.
And massive historical change occurs and you captured that so well in The Insider. And man, that, I don't know. Well, as a red diaper baby now, and now an adult, getting to write a film like that. Were your parents still alive when The Insider came out?
My parents were now I got to think. My mother was not.
Your mother was gone.
No, my mom was gone. My father was alive. Yeah.
I would think they would be so, they were already so proud of you. You'd already won your Oscar. You'd already written Forrest Gump. You'd already done all these
They
other
weren't
things.
wild about Forrest Gump.
They weren't wild. Why?
Because it was, I think they a lot of things for liberals in quotes, or they sometimes don't have a sense of humor about, themselves, for instance.
I know exactly what but you see why I like that sort. Well, I like the way that you wrote those scenes and the protest scenes in Vietnam and all this is because I am bored by a movie where if I can see 5 minutes ahead of time where Eric Roth is going with this, because Eric Roth is a good liberal, so he's going to treat this in the good liberal fashion. Now, I may agree with you, but I'm bored to death. And I didn't come to the movies to get an education about being a liberal.
Right.
I am there to be entertained, to think, to laugh my ass off, to get angry at the human condition, whatever it is. That's why I'm at the movies. And no, I'm sorry that you took that kind of heat.
No, it wasn't any heat. They're generous people, but I know in their heart of hearts, you know what I'm saying? Which was fine. They were thrilled that I won the Oscar. They were, I actually had a funny faux pas that when I got the Oscar, I kind of lost my geography a little bit. And I pointed up, they happened to be in the balcony, but I pointed up, I said to my parents up there, well, everybody assumed they were dead, So everybody called to say, I didn't know your parents had died.
Oh, that's hilarious. Because they always do that when you have your deceased parents and you win something.
Yeah.
And you look up, you look upward.
Heavenward. Yeah.
Heavenward. But seriously, I don't know what arena that was in 94,
that
95.
Was the Shrine Auditorium.
It was in the Shrine Auditorium. Okay. I'm just, as a director now, saying the eye line was just fine wherever you were looking. You were not looking up to heaven. It's not like you're in the Kodak Theater where you've got the fifth balcony.
I think I pointed though.
It's the point.
The point, yeah.
Oh my God. Well, okay. Well, I think that I think the various antagonists that you choose in these films, you approach it with a lot of nuance and a lot of complexity and a lot of layeredness, which makes it a great movie. And I don't know maybe you can do a job if you explaining this. Maybe you can explain this better than the way I just did, because if you're teaching writing to students, the importance of this, and when it comes to politics, and whenever they let me speak to students, I tell them that when it comes to making a documentary film, especially one like mine, the art is more important than the politics. And by the art, I mean the cinema of it.
Yeah.
The cinema of it, because you may get across your politics by making your point. There's the pointy finger. But But if you haven't made a good movie,
Yeah.
if you didn't set out to make a great movie, then the politics are going to be lost. I mean, some people are going to hate the politics.
Yeah.
You've worked against yourself because you didn't put the movie first. You put your political statement first. And I always encourage against that and tell people, if you make a great movie, you will, the politics that you want to convey will be massive. Oh, it'll be so great. But you, because you focused on making a good movie first.
Yeah, it's a perfect jump for me for this blessing that I got to be able to write, which you gave such a nice introduction to, Killers of the Flower Moon, that Marty starts. Literally, I got a text from him today saying we start in like 8 days.
Wow.
And it's like, to me, like, oh my God, how did I get this? I mean, it's like a story I knew nothing about. Just to give a brief synopsis, 1921, Osage Nation live in horrible land in Oklahoma, so they're forced to. They have their own Trail of Tears. And they're probably the poorest people as a group in America. And they discover oil, and they become one of the richest groups in the world. And they behave with people do, got money, they get McMansions and white servants, and enjoy their lives immensely, and all the good fruits that come with some money. And into that comes every creep, killer, con man, and 184 of them are killed for their money. And it's a very complicated story about one particular family. And then into that comes a Texas Ranger who was in the first class of the FBI to try to find, if he could, find some justice. And there is a modicum of justice, but as I say in the script, which I think was somebody said, that to find 12 white jurors to convict a white man of killing a Native American, you have a better chance of convicting him of kicking his dog. And that was true to that point. And then they actually, I won't spoil what happens, but it's quite a piece, and I think it's a Western of a kind. Like it has all the feelings of a Western, and I think it's going to be something, as I said recently, for the ages. I really do. I mean, I think Marty is about to make a movie. It'll be the last of its kind. I can promise you that.
Why do you say that?
Well, I don't think they're going to make big dramas that way. I mean, they'll make the action, the Marvel movies, all the kind of exciting things people like to see. But this one, this kind of grand storytelling with a social content, underneath it, which is what's wonderful, which you brought up about it comes along with it. I mean, I'll give you a movie I always loved, but if you go watch it again, it's really kind of clunky. Is Giant. But it has all these kind of wonderful things in it with, James Dean. And then, of course, they're playing the Yellow Rose of Texas as Rock Hudson's in a fight with somebody to protect his Hispanic grandchild, And
right.
But anyway, those are the kind of movies they did make. I don't think they make. And this one, I think, will be the first. There have been Native American movies, but that will be the cast is predominantly Native American. When you look at a street scene, you'll see 80% Native Americans as
right.
Caucasians. And
so De Niro, as I said, gave me the book.
Yeah.
This is over a year ago now, and I read it right away. And and then to hear that you were writing the screenplay, Scorsese was directing it, De Niro and DiCaprio. Oh my God!
I did it.
You think those days are over?
I don't know how they're going to get money to make huge movies like this, and particularly with the day and date stuff, with releasing things. I think this will certainly attract people. I think Marty got a great deal somehow with where they're going to have it released by Paramount for X amount of time. I don't know how long, and then it'll go on Apple streaming. They're the ones who are paying for most of it, or almost all of it, and it'll be great on Apple streaming. I'm sure it'll bring in subscribers. Why not? Who doesn't want to see Leonardo and Marty Scorsese?
Well, but okay, now we have to talk about this because you just made my heart skip a beat here, because the movies post-pandemic, where are we going to be? And you must have thought about this. I've thought about it. I feel partially, it's silly to feel responsible, but because something else would have done it. But Fincher and I and a man named Josh Donnan began House of Cards. And I wasn't really smart enough
David kind of felt it, that the eyeballs were going to go a certain place, and streaming became, and it wouldn't have been my choice. Not that I don't want as many people to watch something, but that I love going to the movies from the time I was 8 years old, going with my grandfather who spoke nothing but Russian, who just come over from Russia. And, he spoke Yiddish to me, and we sat in the Brooklyn Paramount with the stars on the ceiling, on the balcony, watching the first War of the Worlds, you know what I'm saying? Where I would go all the time. I'd go 2-3 times a week. It was just refuge and everything else. And, it's like, they call movies bigger than life, and television they call smaller than life. And I'm not sure that's true anymore. I think some of the great things we've seen are in television, short story writing and all that. But I think that, look, we just lost the Cinerama Dome, which I'll tell you a story out of school, and I'm not advocating anybody do this. And if you feel you should cut it out, you can cut it out.
Okay.
I remembered as one of my memorable movie experiences going to see 2001: The Space Odyssey in 1968, I think it was. And my wife and I both took acid, and we sat through the first three showings of it. And then 50 years later, I went and sat in the same seat with a friend who I won't mention. We did acid again and sat through it a couple times, But there'll be no more Cinerama Domes. That's gone, So, those years are gone. Yeah, so I don't know that communal experience. I miss it so much. I miss that, I think, as much as anything during the pandemic, not being able to go to a movie.
But what can people like you and I do to make sure that we're able to keep making these movies? Maybe we have to think differently.
Well, I think you're in a great place, because I think documentaries that's a whole other world. Where now I think the documentaries may be actually the best movies. I'd recommend if people go see this movie Time. Have you seen this?
Yes. Oh no, it's
or the other side of the coin in a way. This movie, My Octopus Teacher.
Unbelievable. Again.
A biped becomes your friend,
Yeah.
And I remember because you mentioned Ali. I remember saying to Michael Mann, the director, we can't make a better movie than when we were kings, So we will try, but we can't top it. And I'm not sure we did. In other words, that movie had something that was some kind of alchemy about that man that captured it. And I think we did something else that was pretty extraordinary with the Cohen Tom Crow stuff.
Eric, in speaking of the Academy Awards, if I could just take a second here to give a shout out to our underwriter today. It's actually the film that you had mentioned, nominated this year for Best Documentary, and it's called Time. Now, all of you listening to this, you just heard Eric Roth mention this movie, one of the best documentaries of the year. Everybody's talking about it. It's also the feature documentary debut of a talented young filmmaker. Her name is Garrett Bradley, and she has accomplished something profound. She has made both a beautiful love story, but also a powerful film about America's cruel and racist prison industrial complex. Bradley paints a mesmerizing portrait of the resilience and radical love necessary to prevail over the endless separations caused by this country's mass incarceration epidemic. This is truly one of the best movies, not just documentaries this year, but one of the best movies. So do yourself a favor, watch Time on Prime. I'll have a link to the film right here on the description page of this podcast, of this episode. And again, I want to thank Amazon Studios. These are the film people at Amazon, and they have made some great films over the last few years. And I want to thank them for supporting this podcast and supporting my voice and supporting the work of talented filmmakers, women like Garrett Bradley and her excellent film, Time. And while we're at it, Eric, if you just don't mind another second here, I want to thank and give a shout out to our great underwriter, SignalWire. SignalWire is a remote communication platform for people who like to actually, communicate online. We can see each other. We've all been doing that for the last year, but SignalWire has come up with something incredible in terms of its quality of sound, of picture. Recently, when a major TV studio needed to figure out how to have their actors remotely record their lines, they used SignalWire. So there was virtually no sound or video lag, which allowed them to keep the production, the filming, moving. It's amazing how during this pandemic that we now have something like this. And it's because of SignalWire's great design. It's also great if you just want to have an informal communication with your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. Sometimes, the best ideas come from these random, unplanned conversations that you have with creative people, the creative people that you work with. So, people in the film industry, if you're listening, take notice of this. I know many of you have already. You know what SignalWire is, and I want the public to know what SignalWire is, because it's going to be a big part of our future. And because SignalWire loves Rumble, I want all of you Rumble listeners to sign up before April 30th at signalwire.com with the code MOORE, MOORE. That's somebody you know. And SignalWire will buy lunch for your first team meeting. All the people you got on the screen with you there, they'll buy lunch. Now, don't forget, terms and conditions do apply. So read the fine print. That's signalwire.com and use the code MOORE, MOORE, SignalWire, SIGNAL, wire, WIRE, one word, signalwire.com. Thank you for supporting this podcast. Can I tell a tale out of school here?
Yeah.
Can I just reveal something that I really haven't spoken much about? But during this year, where I've been pretty much contained here in my home, instead of climbing the walls, I decided to do a number of things. First of all, I had just started this podcast, so I got to do this 2 or 3 times a week, which has been exhilarating to me. But I also decided that it was time to write fiction, to write some feature films. And so I started on 2 screenplays, maybe, I don't know, 9 months ago. And I have to tell you that I forget if it was Picasso or some great artist who said that fiction is a lie, but that in telling the lie, you tell sometimes greater truths than if you were watching or reading nonfiction. And that has been the case with me in writing, which I'm in the process of, these 2 screenplays.
You're welcome to send them to me. I'll tear you apart. I'm kidding. You're welcome to send them, though.
No. I will take you up on that.
We have a note factory here.
Yeah, no. Seriously, remember, you don't know this, but I was raised by nuns. I mean, I went to Catholic schools, and I at a very early age became well equipped to deal with all sorts of criticism. But but I think this. Do you know what I'm trying to describe? Because you're talking essentially.
I mean, you asked me about writing. I mean, that's what motivates me every morning. I mean, I can sit and I can go take I can go take a journey, a place I've never been, meet people I've never met.
That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
And I feel released by it in some ways. I
think it's wonderful.
I will, when I'm ready, I will send these to you.
I'll tell you a truth about me, which I've said before, but I think I'm a frustrated novelist. I've never written a novel, so what am I waiting for? What am I afraid of? And I haven't done it.
Well, what are you?
I'm 76 and I've always enjoyed.
Young. That's young. 76 is the new 56.
You say, except for if I had a heart attack this very moment, people would say, well, he was 76. You know what I'm saying?
People have heart attacks at 56. I'm telling you.
I know. You know what I'm saying. Anyway.
I know, but seriously, I did read I read you, and I know you were making a joke where somebody was talking to you, and what a wonderful writer you are, and you said, I'm not a writer. And the interviewer said, what do you mean by that? Well, he says, you said I write screenplays, and the page is not filled up with words.
Just use dots and dashes and ellipses and.
Right.
You're not a poet. I always felt it was a bastardized form. It's I think you can be great at it and you be an artist at even, but I'm not sure, as I said to you earlier, whether it's a great art, I don't know. Maybe, as I think, be artful. I think it's a great craft. And it's such a combination of things. And what value is it once you print it out if they don't put it on the screen? Any kind of screen.
Right.
So,
but can you understand me? And I'm, obviously 10 years younger than you, but there is this thing in me that I you say you want to write your novel and you haven't written it. I want to write my Forrest Gump. I want to write, my extrememely loud and incredibly
Well, you
close.
will. I'm sure you will. Look at the vision you had for the things you did. I remember that having never had met you, but like Bowling for Columbine,
Yes.
I thought you captured something about that. I put aside all the Second Amendment stuff. You captured something about the quality of the reality of that was never going to go away. And I don't even know what the sociopathy of the whole thing is, if there's such a word. But that these kids seem to almost live a kind of normal life.
Part of that is because I'm just always thinking the story we're being told is not the whole story.
I think you'll find, I will give you one thing you'll find.
Yeah.
I didn't know this about my own work, that you'll find that you will repeat things which will start revealing who you are, and which I think is great. But you may not even recognize it. So there was a critic named Elvis Mitchell who used to write for the New York Times. A very smart man. He does a podcast like you for, I think, NPR on the movies. And he said to me, your movies are about loneliness. I said, really? And I thought about it, and I think he's right. I think that every one of my movies is about loneliness. And so I'm obviously coping with that in some way, which I wasn't even aware of. So I have no problem with that, and I'll just try to be more poetic about it or something. But that, it does, I guess it keeps moving me to try to sort of find a home or something,
The Columbine Killers, when they started the shooting, and they were skipping their 4th hour AP French philosophy class.
Right.
That's who they were. The man on the top floor of the Las Vegas hotel spraying machine gun bullets on the festival crowd below a few years ago was a multimillionaire. This is what always fascinates me, this part of the story. And this is what I was explaining at the end of Munich, that you and Spielberg, you had these complicated characters that told me many more truths and forced me to ask questions that I never would have asked. That's the kind of writing I want to do. And so when I've started this fiction writing, I feel like I'm released in a way, because I can tell these truths by painting a picture. It's my picture.
Yes.
But I'm not necessarily telling my truths. I'm telling these other truths that are there that sometimes we as the public don't want to see.
So I'll tell you, I had an opportunity, and I warned you I was going to mention this, but I had an opportunity through oddball circumstances to become very close with I think one of the great American writers, Dennis Johnson, who wrote, Angels in America. And
of course,
for most people don't know who he is, but he was one of our real poets. And he was so dogged about the fact that the characters took him. Once he figured out who they were, then he was on their journey. And to be able to do that is really hard, but to stay true to that. And he would, I know Michael Cimino, the kind of interesting director who did, Deer Hunter and amongst others. And I did a rewrite for him on a movie called Year of the Dragon with Mickey Rourke. And but I saw that he had prepared, and I'm just giving you this a piece of advice. He prepared for Mickey Rourke a wallet that had all the appropriate things in it for this particular character: his draft card, his pictures of him in Vietnam, his daughter, his ex-wife, whatever it was. Fortune from a fortune cookie meant something to him. And Mickey Rourke never looked at it, but he had it in his back pocket and knew this is that person. So I always say to writers, screenwriters, and writers know this probably by anyway, that, everybody's got to have a distinctive voice, have their own psychology, that to all be individuals. And that's the way they'll become, real people. And so I hope you're doing that with your scripts.
I am. I'm probably doing too much of it. One thing that I try to, when I've taught various camera people that I've worked with, is that sometimes the most important thing that's happening in a nonfiction film is not what's directly in the lens, but in your peripheral vision. So try to keep your one eye in the lens, but try to keep the other eye open.
Well, the same thing holds true with fiction writing, even if it's an adaptation. That the best writing is subtextual writing. It's the hardest, and great writers can do it. So they write about what's happening without writing about what's happening. the sort of more clunky, obvious writers are doing sort of like telling you what's going on when you can see what's going on. But for somebody talking about, let's say, loneliness, and they're talking about a chicken they had met, you know what I'm saying, who was on a bus or on an airplane when he was flying alone in Russia, etc. You all of a sudden can paint a picture and tell the same story.
Well, let me say just before we end here, first of all, your Star is Born, the latest one here that won various awards and an Oscar for that song, is the best Star is Born. They made this film since the 1930s, and you nailed it. And
well, it was kind of a revelation for me in this sense, because I hadn't had a movie made in 2 or 3 years, I guess, maybe 4. And I started to feel maybe age has caught up with me a little bit. And Bradley offered me this. I wasn't as keen about the first version they had put together. And I said, I really need to kind of go off, and you and I, and if Lady Gaga's willing, let's see what we can, devise here. But it also brought me back to, it's a longer story about years I spent with many musicians like Jim Morrison and Jerry Garcia and stuff. And I love music. And it sort of, I think, rekindled my, passion for, what was that all about? What was the 70s about? All that stuff. So it was a joy to be able to be part of something modern and new, and also to have this, the backbone being music. And even though you're still stuck with the same storytelling, he had to die at the end.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, it was genius. It didn't pull its punch. And when they sang that song at the Oscars, I know it was a live show, but were they going to have sex on that piano?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, these are.
It didn't get cut out, did it? I mean, it was like
I was there, so I never saw anything that.
Okay.
The clothing remained on.
And then listen, as we leave, give us a piece of hope post-pandemic. It's called Dune. You've written the new Dune.
Well, I'm one of the writers. I wrote my big sort of hallucinogenic version. The director, who I adore, I did some rewriting on. What was it called? His other science fiction movie. That's where we became friendly. Arrival. And he said, "Go take a crack at it and see what you want to do." And I said, "I'm going to just go for broke," and I did. It's like, I started the movie, which is no longer in the movie. I started the movie with and God created Earth, right? And we have this whole Genesis, but it's not, but it was of the planet Dune, so weird animals and everything. And then he said to me, "It's magnificent, but now we have to pay for the rest of the movie." So I think I gave him a great, soulful, and very far sort of thinking version. And I think he needed to cut it down, which he did. And they brought in a nice writer named John Spade, who did some work on it too, and made it sort of stand on its own 2 feet. And I think what I've seen, I think it's pretty special. I think they had to get there for a while. They had some work to do. But they now have something that, I don't want to say Lord of the Rings, but maybe, it's pretty special.
So it's done now. It's done.
Yeah, it's done. And it's coming out in October.
October.
Yeah, it'll be probably 3 weeks in a theater, and that would be fun to see it because it's really so beautiful. And
I would think you'd have to see this in a movie.
I think they can, and then they can catch HBO Max has it then.
Right. Wow. So Eric, thank you. Oscar-winning screenwriter Eric Roth, and nominated for the Oscars this April right now as producer of Mank. Great film. Go see it. Thank you for being part of this. And don't be afraid to send me the right notes.
Those notes. I'll drop a name, but I out of the blue, Frank Ocean, who I think is a pretty talented guy, the
Yes.
singer. He's writing kind of more of like a visual album. And he said, would you give me notes on, this kind of thing I'm writing? I said, I'll be glad to, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to hurt your feelings, but, I'll tell you what I think works for me anyway. And he was great. I mean, he took it like a grown up.
Yes. Unfortunately, we've never heard from Frank again. So
No, Frank's done.
no, he's fine. He's fine.
He's just
Eric Roth.
Become a Lake. He's Frank Lake now.
Yes, Frank. Eric, thank you so much. Thank you.
brother.
This
Nice to talk.
is Michael Moore, and this, my friends, is Rumble. Thanks to our executive producer Basil Hamden and our editor Nick Quaz. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.